Good afternoon, everybody. It's 12 o'clock, so we will start the presentation very shortly. We'll just give it a minute or two for any late arrivals. If you could confirm, anyone who has already joined, if you can hear me okay, just in the chat box on the right-hand side of the screen. I just want to make sure you can all hear me before we start talking, and then once we've had that confirmed, we can start going through the presentation. So if you could just give the comment there a like if you can hear me, or just post yes I can hear you, that would be great. And once that's confirmed, we can get the presentation underway. Not seeing any confirmation yet. People are continuing to join, so for those of you who are just joining, thank you very much. If you can confirm in the chat box on the right hand side, I just need somebody that you can confirm you can hear me. That would be great, and we can get started. I've had a comment to say that you're struggling to hear me. Is that the case for everybody? So I'm not sure if we are having some technical difficulties here, or if others can hear. Excellent. So I've had confirmation that people can hear me, so that's fantastic. So thank you very much for that. What we will do is we'll get the presentation underway now. Just to emphasise that myself, Gemma Callow, and my colleague Peter Edwards, we are both working from home. There are pets and children, etc. around, so apologies for any background noise. This presentation is being recorded, and we will send you a link to it afterwards so you can share with family and friends, or if you need to look back to check any information, you'll be able to do so. So just to start, as I say, my name is Gemma Callow. I am the Communications Manager for the Clean Air Zone, leading on stakeholder engagement. My colleague Peter Edwards is the Principal Clean Air Zone Officer, and we will talk you through now what this means for those of you who work in the city centre. If you have any questions during the course of the presentation, if you could just pop them in the chat box on the right hand side. Once we've talked through the slides, we will then answer all your questions at the end. So Birmingham is introducing a clean air zone. It's government mandated. We've been instructed to do so because poor air quality has been declared a national health emergency. In Birmingham alone, up to 900 people every year are dying from conditions linked to air pollution, such as cancer, heart disease and lung disease. I won't go through all the figures on the screen, you can see them yourselves. Those who are living in deprived areas where you're closer to the roads, you're more likely to be affected. If you're older, more vulnerable, again, you're more likely to be affected by the impacts of air pollution. And in particular, children who are closer to the ground and closer to those exhaust fumes inhale 3 times more air pollution than we do as adults, just because they are closer to those exhaust fumes. And that has a significant impact on their development and growth. So we are instructed to do something. It's important we do so, and that's why the Clean Air Zone is being introduced. So prior to COVID taking effect, we did do some research into travel behaviour in the city centre, and it was ascertained that 50% of all journeys into the city centre were undertaken by car every day. Of those car journeys, 250,000 of them every day were for less than 1 mile. So what the Clean Air Zone is trying to do is to deter the most high polluting vehicles from entering the city centre, but also get people to think about alternative ways to travel, particularly those journeys that are less than 1 mile. So 20-minute walk, 5-10 minute bike ride could be undertaken on public transport. So the idea of the Clean Air Zone is to deter private car use and get people to consider alternative options. So clean air zones are being introduced across the country. Bath is the first outside of London. They go live on Monday. In Birmingham, we will go live on the 1st of June this year. And each local authority has the power to decide the boundaries for the zone and also what category. In Birmingham, we're introducing a category D clean air zone. So that means all non-compliant vehicles, including private cars, will be subject to the charge. It's important to stress that a clean air zone is not the same as a congestion charge. So a congestion charge will charge every single vehicle that enters a specific area. With the clean air zone, it's only the most high polluting vehicles. So we anticipate about 1 in 4 vehicles will be subject to that charge. And that includes buses, taxis, lorries, vans and cars. So in Birmingham, our clean air zone will be the blue area you can see on screen. It's everywhere within the A4540 Middleway, but not the Middleway itself. Excuse me. So if you are in a compliant vehicle that meets the emission standards, you don't have to take any action. If you are in a non-compliant vehicle that is subject to the charge, you can drive around the A4540 Middleway, no problem. But if you enter from the 1st of June in that vehicle, you will be subject to a daily charge. For cars, taxis and vans, that will be £8 a day. And for HGVs, coaches and buses, that will be £50 a day. It's important to note that a day is midnight to midnight, not 24 hours from when you enter the zone. During that midnight to midnight threshold, you can enter and leave the zone as many times as you want for a single charge. However, if you cross that midnight threshold, say you enter at 10 PM, leave at 2 AM, you will therefore be subject to 2 charges because that spans 2 days. You'll be able to pay using the government payment system, which will be available online and over the phone. And you have a 13-day payment window in which to pay. And that payment window includes 6 days before the day you go in, the day you go in, and 6 days after. You must pay within that time frame. If you don't, you'll be subject to a fixed penalty notice of £120. That will come in the post, and if you pay it within 14 days, it will be reduced to £60. It is important to note that you will not receive any alert that you have entered the zone, so you won't get a text or an email. We are installing over 300 signs on the boundary and approach to the zone. That will be the indication that you're entering a chargeable area, but you won't receive any other notification. So the onus is on you as a driver to know that you've entered, and is on you as a driver to make the payment within that time frame. So the most obvious question is, will I be charged? What is a compliant vehicle? The easiest and the best thing to do is to go onto the Brumbury's website. We will add a link to the chat. And from there, you can click onto the government vehicle checker where you can input your registration detail and it will tell you whether or not you're subject to the charge. The emission standards that we are looking for is a Euro 4 petrol or better, a Euro 6 diesel or better, gas Euro 6, fully electric, fully hydrogen fuel cell or hybrid electric, subject to those Euro 4 petrol, Euro 6 diesel standards. You can find this information in your V5C logbook. Most Euro 4 petrol vehicles were manufactured from 2006 onwards, and most Euro 6 diesel came into effect from September 2015 onwards. Those dates are guidance only. It is the Euro standard that we're looking for. So please go onto the Brumbury's website, click on that link and check if you'll be charged. Like I say, if you're not going to be charged, you don't need to take any action. So it's important to stress the clean air zone is not intended to be a money-making scheme. For us, if we make no money from this project, then we've achieved our objective because we will have deterred all high polluting vehicles from entering the city centre, and therefore we will have improved air quality. That is our objective. However, we do understand, particularly in the early days, that we will make money through this scheme. So that money has to be reinvested in transport related projects and policies. It cannot be used for the general council budget, so it can't be used to support bin collections or replacing the floozy and the jacuzzi, etc. So some of the projects that have been identified so far are introducing controlled parking zones on the boundary of the clean air zone. That's to protect residents, to stop people dumping their cars on the edge of the zone and walking in, causing problems to them. We've implemented or will introduce funding for a hydrogen bus pilot scheme. We will improve city centre pedestrianisation to make walking a more appealing option, so making it safer and more appealing to do so. And we will also bring forward a programme of active and sustainable travel. So some of the bus lanes, for example, cycle lanes that you've seen introduced during COVID-19. It will bring forward those to make them permanent more quickly, so that again, cycling becomes a safer option and you're not having to mix amongst cars to do that. I'm now going to hand over to my colleague Peter. He will talk you through the support that's available specifically for workers. Thanks, Peter.
Thank you, Gemma. Good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, my name's Peter Edwards, Principal Clean Air Zone Officer within the Clean Air Zone team, working with Gemma. I have overall responsibility for delivering the exemptions part of the project. So we're going to talk about the exemptions first off, and we're also then going to talk about the financial incentives that are available. And given that the nature of this call and the audience, we're going to particularly focus on people that work in the Clean Air Zone. I think it's important before we start to talk about these exemptions is to kind of set how they were set. So in 2018, a consultation was conducted by Birmingham City Council about the Clean Air Zone. The consultation was not, shall we do a Clean Air Zone, because we were mandated to do so by central government, and we've already talked about the horrendous impact on Birmingham residents of poor air quality. More, the consultation was, how should we do it and who should we support? Who should receive the most support? Who is most likely to be impacted by the introduction of a Clean Air Zone? And off the back of that consultation, which received something like 12,000 responses, a set of exemptions and financial incentives was formulated. So we're going to talk through those, how you apply for those, who's eligible, that sort of thing. So you can see on screen, here are the main applicable exemptions. So the first one is for residents within the Clean Air Zone. As with this is a workers webinar, I'm not going to focus too much on that one. But if you know anyone who lives in the Clean Air Zone, then please tell them to apply for their exemption. They can have up to 2 years. This is all applicable on the front page of the Birminghams website. Very simple process of creating an account, identifying which exemption you think you're eligible for, and then supplying us with some evidence by uploading some pictures or PDFs, etc., of your document. So that's like usually your vehicle document. And for the worker one that we'll focus more on today, we need to see proof that you earn less than £30,000 a year and work for more than 18 hours a week in the zone. If you can prove that to us via the application process, on our website, then you can access a 1-year exemption as a Clean Air Zone worker. We'll talk more about the detail of that, I think, on the next slide. But also, if you know of anyone who operates a fleet within the Clean Air Zone, they can they can access an exemption for their fleet. If they've got non-compliant fleet vehicles, we calling them commercial vehicles for the exemption. And finally, there will be an exemption for people that visit Birmingham Children's Hospital and Badger and Atwood Green / Bath Row Medical Centre, because these are medical centres, hospitals that offer out of hours or emergency services. That will be done by a different process, whereby you will be given a voucher at reception or when you visit the centre, which you then credit online, which will then grant you a daily exemption. More information will be released about that in the run up to the zone going live. Next slide, please, Gemma. Just to reiterate, of course, like Gemma said, there's the Q&A box on the side here, so please feel free to ask questions as we go along. We will address them at the end, but if they just pop into your head, just please go ahead. So yeah, here's a bit more detail on the exemption for workers. So the application process is open now. It's front and centre on the front of the Birminghams website. So as Gemma said, we want you to go to our website. We want you to check your vehicle if it is compliant. If it is compliant, then you don't need an exemption. Please don't apply for one. If you're non-compliant, then you can click to apply, but we would like you to read the terms and conditions first, and we also have a guidance document with screenshots which talks you through the application process. Please don't begin the process until you've got the documentation that is detailed on the right hand side. It's important to note that you need to work at least 18 hours a week at an address in the Clean Air Zone. The way that we will ask you to prove that is via a letter from your employer, and that letter should include, it should be on letterheaded paper, should be an official looking document signed by HR or your manager, stating that Mr. Peter Edwards works for the Clean Air Zone team at Lancaster Circus for Birmingham City Council, and he works for 35 hours a week. There is a model workplace letter on our website because we've had some trouble with people meeting the requirements, so please check that letter on the website before submitting it. because if it's not right, we will come back to you, but we won't just decline you offhand. We will just come back and say you've forgotten to state the hours, or you've forgotten to state the location, that sort of thing. We will also ask you to obviously provide details of the vehicle. That will be in most cases is the V5, the vehicle logbook. It's important to note that you must be the registered keeper of that vehicle. It must have your name on it. It's important to note also when applying that you should apply if applying for the workers exemption with your work address. If you put in your postcode in suburban Birmingham, B14, whatever, the system will not allow you to apply because that is not an address within the clean air zone. So when applying for a worker exemption, you use your work address. And we will assess your income by either a P60 or a payslip. Payslip isn't on the slide, Gemma, so we just need to update the slide. So it's a P60 if you're self-employed, a tax return, or a payslip from the last 3 months. So we just need to update that slide. Next one, please, Gemma. So in addition to those exemptions that you can apply for online, there's also a number of other exemptions for more specialist vehicles or for different categories. So it's important to note that if you have a blue badge, that does not grant you an exemption from clean air zone charging. However, if your vehicle has what's known as disabled passenger tax class status, and this is noted on your V5 on your logbook, then that gives you an automatic national exemption from all clean air zones. You can access this vehicle status, it's a class status, via the DVLA if you are in receipt of specific disability benefits. There is information about this on our website, but just to reiterate, having a blue badge does not give you an exemption from clean air zone charging. Motorcycles are exempt, showman's vehicles are exempt, so this is a vehicle used for kind of putting on circuses and fairs and events. Very specialist vehicles, obviously not easy to replace or to retrofit. Historic vehicles, so vehicles over 40 years old. This again is an automatic national exemption because that is a DVLA status. And then you've got specialist vehicles, so your gritters, your cranes, your JCBs, but also emergency services vehicles. Obviously, we won't be charging ambulances to drive through the clean air zone, or police or any of the other emergency services. And finally, not-for-profit community and school transport will be able to apply for an exemption also. Next slide, please. So, in addition to the exemptions, we also have secured a £35 million funding pot from central government. Now, the one that is most relevant to this call and the one that I'll spend some time on is our Scrappage and Mobility Scheme. So, if you are eligible, please go ahead and apply for your exemption. That is open now, and that will buy you some breathing space if you work in the clean air zone and are worried about having to pay the charge. That will give you 1 year from the 1st of June where you won't have to pay the charge if you are eligible. However, we don't just want to give people an exemption. We want people to change their behaviour or to change their vehicle. The overall objective of the clean air zone is to improve the air quality. In order to do that, we're offering a scrappage scheme for people that work in the clean air zone. So the terms and conditions will be roughly the same, whereby you will need to prove all of those things that I detailed on the previous slide. If you are approved, there will be a separate application process. It will not just be filtered straight from the exemption process. Then we will pass you on to a Scrappage, our partner, who has recently been appointed and will be making announcements soon, who will organise to scrap your vehicle for you. In exchange for scrapping that non-compliant vehicle, you will be offered 2 options, and those 2 options are either £2,000 towards the cost, off the cost of a new compliant vehicle. That's not a brand new vehicle. It doesn't have to be a brand new Nissan Leaf. That is towards a compliant vehicle. So like Gemma said, from about 2006 onwards for petrol and about 2015 onwards for diesel. Or you can have £2,000 towards mobility credit. So £2,000 put into a Swift account with Transport for West Midlands to be used on the public transport network. So depending where you live, that's probably up to about 2 years travel if you were to buy a season ticket. So a significant amount of credit for public transport, but the vehicle will need to be scrapped, of course. This scrappage scheme is not live yet, not live for application, but will be in the coming months. We're making good progress with it in the background. If you're interested in that scrappage scheme, you can express that interest via our website, and I'm sure we can supply the link when we follow up after the call, or we can put it in the chat when we're doing questions at the end of the presentation. The next two pots obviously perhaps aren't quite as relevant to the audience of this call, but we also have a pot of £10 million to help people upgrade heavy duty vehicles and coaches. That is open for applications now, and a £15 million pot of money to help support Birmingham's licensed hackney carriage and private hire drivers to upgrade, and already we've seen something like 1,500 applications from drivers, from taxi and private hire drivers in the city. So we can already see the impact that the clean air zone and the implementation of the clean air zone is having before the clean air zone actually even goes live, because a lot of these drivers have upgraded their vehicles and they're some of the most frequent drivers into the city centre. So we're already having an impact ahead of launch. Next slide, please, Gemma. So we've talked about the exemptions and the support available, and I think it's also important to kind of set this into the context of where Birmingham is trying to go to make Birmingham a cleaner, greener, safer, more enjoyable city to live in. The clean air zone is one element of Birmingham's transport plan, but it is very much not the only element. So Birmingham has this transport plan. It also has the emergency transport plan, which was published in light of the COVID pandemic, and it has four main visions to try and make Birmingham, as I said, a cleaner, greener place to live. So the first one is to try and reallocate road space away from the private motor vehicle and give that space to people who are walking, cycling or using public transport. So as Gemma's already touched upon, cycle lanes, giving people more space on local high streets by removing car parking, which was particularly important to give people more space to socially distance when using high streets during the pandemic. Bus priority, bus lanes, taking space away from relatively inefficient private motor vehicles and giving it to cleaner, greener and more efficient modes of transport. The next vision is to transform the city centre. So that's by pedestrianisation, improving cycling and walking routes across the city, and potentially by restricting the through traffic of private motor vehicles, helping to enable public transport, so more like cross-city bus routes, which are not possible at the moment because of the level of congestion with private vehicles. So again, that is something that's being implemented as we speak and will continue to accelerate going forward. Recently received a further £4 million, I think it was, from the government's emergency active travel fund to help implement some of these changes. Then there is the ambition to prioritise active travel in local neighbourhoods, so recognising that Birmingham is a big city, not just the city centre, not just the area covered by the clean air zone. So this can be in the form of low traffic neighbourhoods, which have been implemented in various areas across the city: Kings Heath, Bourneville, Lascelles, Castle Vale, with elements of these where we're restricting through traffic, trying to make it safer for people to walk and cycle in their local neighbourhoods and to choose to go away from those short journeys in a car and travel in a different way. And then finally, to try and manage demand by using parking as a travel demand management tool, so removing all free on-street car parking in the clean air zone area. We've already talked about controlled parking zones to help residents on the outskirts of the zone. So trying to again make travelling into the clean air zone, into the city centre in a private vehicle less convenient, making it more convenient and more pleasant for people trying to choose to walk, cycle or use public transport. And then the final slide, please, Gemma. Okay, and this is kind of following on from the previous slide in just terms of trying to set this into a wider context. Birmingham has set a target to be net zero by 2030. We can't do that all on our own. Birmingham City Council can't do that on their own. We need the help of individuals, communities, businesses and everyone across the city to think about how they can impact on that. So the clean air zone is kind of acting as an enabler of that change, and all those other measures that I've talked about on the previous slide, trying to assist with that. In addition to some of the other stuff we've talked about, we are also looking to expand the city's electric vehicle charging points. We've signed a contract to implement that. You'll start to see that in 2021, more electric vehicle charging points being installed. Talked already about hydrogen buses. Those will be on our roads next year in time for the Commonwealth Games, and also the purchase and lease of up to 50 electric Hackney carriages to support the Hackney industry, because we know that it's not so easy for them to upgrade to a cleaner and greener vehicle as it is for, say, a private hire driver. So there's a lot going on across the city. It's not just Birmingham City Council that's doing this. We're working with a lot of different partners. We're working in the community to try and improve the air quality and reduce congestion and all the impacts that congestion, then knock-on effects that congestion and air pollution have on this city. So that concludes the presentation. I hope you find it useful. I haven't had any questions come through. What I would say is that there is our website, brumbreathes.co.uk. Please use the website, use the vehicle checker, check if your vehicle is compliant or not. If you can't find the answer to what you want either in this webinar session or following onto the website, then please email us, cleanair@birmingham.gov.uk. And I will just pause for a second just to see any questions come through and have a drink of water, because I've been talking for quite a long period, and then we will address any questions that start to come through, so just bear with me. Okay. I've got a question here about providing gas and electrical repairs. So I don't really want to talk about specific circumstances on the call. We do have an exemption that I didn't touch upon in great detail, which is part of the commercial vehicle exemption, whereby if you have a finance agreement on those vehicles that is going to run past the launch of the zone in June, and you can evidence to us that you often deliver into the zone and work in the zone and the vehicles are stored in the zone, then you may be eligible for that exemption. So if you go on our website and within the terms and conditions, we have the commercial vehicle exemption, which is pretty cut and dry. You have to be based in the zone. Then the second one, the finance agreement one, that was a slight bit more flexibility. So please go and take a look at the existing finance exemption for commercial vehicles. But I wouldn't want to comment on kind of specific circumstances over the webinar without knowing the detail. But yeah, go and have a look at the terms and conditions for the different exemptions. No other questions coming through just yet, so I'll just give it a couple of minutes. I'll just put myself on mute and leave it a couple of minutes to see if anything comes through. Okay, well, there doesn't seem to be any questions coming through at all. So just like to take this opportunity on behalf of myself and Gemma and Birmingham City Council to say thank you for joining, taking time out of your day. I hope you found the presentation useful. As I say, we will be sending round the presentation afterwards. We'll record it, we'll put it onto YouTube, and we'll send a variety of links and information. Please, as I said, please share this with friends, family, colleagues. We want to engage as many people as possible and to raise awareness of the clean air zone. The last thing we want is on the 1st of June, 2nd of June for people to say, well, I didn't know this was happening, but we need help to do that, especially when we can only deliver events like this remotely because of the pandemic. So there's still no further questions coming through, so I would just end by saying thank you very much, and we will be in touch with further information. But thank you and hope you found it useful. Cheers. Goodbye.